Q11. Mule application is deployed to customer-hosted runtime. Asynchronous logging was implemented to improve throughput of the system, but it was observed over the period of time that few of the important exception log messages which were used to roll back transactions are not working, as expected, causing huge loss to the organization. Organization wants to avoid these losses. Application also has constraints due to which they can't compromise on throughput much. What is the possible option in this case? A. Logging needs to be changed from asynchronous to synchronous. B. External log appender needs to be used in this case. C. Persistent memory storage should be used in such scenarios. D. Mixed configuration of asynchronous or synchronous loggers should be used to log exceptions via synchronous way. The correct answer is D. Mixed configuration of asynchronous or synchronous loggers should be used to log exceptions via synchronous way. Explanation why D is correct. Mule runtime relies on log4j2, which supports a mixed configuration containing both asynchronous and synchronous loggers. By keeping general logging asynchronous, overall application throughput remains high. By configuring specific critical exception loggers synchronously, essential error messages are immediately flushed to disk before transaction rollbacks occur, eliminating log loss. Why other options are incorrect? A is incorrect. Changing the entire application logging to synchronous forces every thread to block and wait for disk I/O operations complete, introducing latency across all flows, and violating constraint to preserve throughput. B is incorrect. An external log appender changes the destination of the logs, e.g., Splunk or syslog, but does not change how messages are queued in memory. If logging remains asynchronous, entries in the in-memory ring buffer can still be lost during sudden failures before reaching the external target. C is incorrect. Standard log4j2 asynchronous logging relies on volatile in-memory ring buffers, LMAX disruptor. It does not natively support disk-back persistent storage for logging buffers, making this option technically non-viable. Q12. An insurance provider is implementing Anypoint platform to manage its application infrastructure and is using the customer-hosted runtime for its business due to certain financial requirements it must meet. It has built a number of synchronous APIs and is currently hosting these on a Mule runtime. On one server, these applications make use of a number of components, including heavy use of object stores and VM queues. Business has grown rapidly in the last year, and the insurance provider is starting to receive reports of reliability issues from its applications. The DevOps team indicates that the APIs are currently handling too many requests, and this is overloading the server. The team has also mentioned that there is a significant downtime when the server is down for maintenance. As an integration architect, which option would you suggest to mitigate these issues? A. Add a load balancer and add additional servers in a server group configuration. B. Add a load balancer and add additional servers in a cluster configuration. C. Increase physical specifications of server CPU memory and network. D. Change applications by using an event-driven model. The correct answer is B. Add a load balancer and add additional servers in a cluster configuration. Explanation why B is correct. A cluster configuration connects multiple Mule runtimes together to provide high availability, active-active load distribution, and shared state memory. Because the applications rely heavily on object stores and VM queues, clustering is strictly required so that object store data is synchronized across nodes and VM queue messages can be shared and processed continuously. Combined with a load balancer, it routes incoming traffic across nodes to eliminate single server overloading and ensures zero downtime during maintenance. Why other options are incorrect? A is incorrect. Although a server group allows multiple servers to receive traffic via a load balancer, individual nodes in a server group act independently without inter-node communication. As a result, VM queues and object stores will remain isolated on each server rather than shared, leading to data inconsistency. C is incorrect. Scaling vertically by increasing CPU and memory increases capacity on a single node, but it retains a single point of failure and does not eliminate scheduled maintenance downtime. D is incorrect. Redesigning all synchronous APIs into an event-driven architecture requires rewriting core business logic and does not solve the fundamental infrastructure requirement for shared object stores, distributed VM queues, and high availability. Q13. A Mule application is being designed for deployment to a single CloudHub worker. The Mule application will have a flow that connects to a SaaS system to perform some operations each time the flow is invoked. The SaaS system connector has operations that can be configured to request a short-lived token, 15 minutes, that can be reused for subsequent connections within the 15-minute time window. After the token expires, a new token must be requested and stored. What is the most performant and idiomatic used for an intended purpose? Anypoint platform component or service to use to support persisting and reusing tokens in the Mule application to help speed up reconnecting the Mule application to the SaaS application. A. Non-persistent object store. B. Persistent object store. C. Variable. D. Database. The correct answer is A. Non-persistent object store. Explanation. Why A is correct. A non-persistent transient object store keeps key value pairs stored directly in volatile memory RAM. Because memory read/write operations avoid disk and network I/O. This is the most performant mechanism for caching rapidly expiring data. Additionally, caching short-lived authentication tokens, like a 15-minute token, and configuring an entry time to live TTL is the idiomatic purpose of an object store in MuleSoft architectures. Why other options are incorrect? B is incorrect. A persistent object store writes entries to disk or an external persistence service. While it ensures survival across application restarts, disk operations introduce higher latency. For a short-lived token, 15 minutes, the overhead of disk I/O degrades performance unnecessarily. C is incorrect. Flow variables, VARs, exist only within the scope of a single message processor execution thread. They cannot persist across multiple independent flow invocations or HTTP requests, so a variable cannot be reused for subsequent connections. D is incorrect. A database is intended for long-term relational or persistent structured storage. Using an external database to store a 15-minute token introduces significant network and I/O latency, heavy infrastructure overhead, and is not an idiomatic design pattern for temporary token caching. Q14. A global high-volume shopping mule application is being built and will be deployed to CloudHub. To improve performance, the Mule application uses a cache scope that maintains cache state in a CloudHub object store. Web clients will access the Mule application over HTTP from all around the world, with peak volume coinciding with business hours in a web client's geographic location. To achieve optimal performance, what Anypoint platform region should be chosen for the CloudHub object store? A. Choose the same region as to where the Mule application is deployed. B. Choose the U.S. West region, the only supported region for CloudHub object stores. C. Choose the geographically closest available region for each web client. D. Choose a region that is the traffic-weighted geographic center of all web clients. The correct answer is A. Choose the same region as to where the Mule application is deployed. Explanation why A is correct. In CloudHub, the object store service, Object Store v2, is bound to the same control plane and runtime region as the worker hosting the Mule application. When a cache scope executes, it performs frequent read and write network calls directly between the CloudHub worker and the Object Store service. Deploying the object store in the same region as the application minimizes network latency and round-trip time for every cache lookup, ensuring optimal performance for the flow execution. Why other options are incorrect? B is incorrect. CloudHub Object Store v2 is not restricted to U.S. West. It is available globally across all standard CloudHub regions where applications can be deployed. C is incorrect. Web clients interact directly with the Mule application endpoint, not with the Object Store service. Individual web clients cannot establish independent connections to different regional object stores for an application's internal cache scope. D is incorrect. Attempting to place the object store in a traffic-weighted center region separate from the application worker would introduce cross-region network latency on every cache lookup, severely degrading performance of the Mule application. Q15. Which Anypoint platform component helps integration developers discover and share reusable APIs, connectors, and templates? A. Anypoint Exchange. B. API Manager. C. Anypoint Studio. D. Design Center. Q16. A trading company handles millions of requests a day. Due to the nature of its business, it requires excellent performance and reliability within its application. For this purpose, company uses a number of event-based APIs hosted on various Mule clusters that communicate across a shared message queue sitting within its network. Which method should be used to meet the company's requirement for its system? A. XA transactions and XA connected components. B. JMS transactions. C. JMS manual acknowledgments with a reliability pattern. D. VM queues with reliability pattern. The correct answer is C. JMS manual acknowledgments with a reliability pattern. Explanation. Why C is correct. High-volume event-driven applications handling millions of requests per day require both maximum throughput and guaranteed reliability. Using JMS manual acknowledgments paired with a reliability pattern, such as consuming the message, processing/persisting it, and only sending an explicit ACK back to the broker once execution succeeds, ensures zero message loss without incurring heavy transactional overhead. If processing fails, the unacknowledged message remains safely on the broker queue to be retried. Why other options are incorrect? A is incorrect. XA transactions coordinate two-phase commits across multiple heterogeneous resources. They carry massive performance overhead due to blocking lock mechanisms and network coordination, making them unsuitable for processing millions of high-throughput daily transactions. B is incorrect. Standard JMS transactions lock resources and tie up execution threads during message processing, which degrades throughput and limits performance under heavy load compared to asynchronous manual acknowledgments. D is incorrect. VM queues are bound to memory across nodes within a single application/cluster instance and are not ideal as a primary enterprise message queue shared across completely separate event-based APIs across a corporate network. Q17. A Mule application named Pub uses a persistence object store. The Pub Mule application is deployed to CloudHub and configured to use Object Store v2. Another Mule application named Sub is being developed to retrieve values from the Pub Mule application persistence object store and will also be deployed to CloudHub. What is the most direct way for the Sub Mule application to retrieve values from the Pub Mule application persistence object store with the least latency? A. Use an object store connector configured to access the Pub Mule application persistence object store. B. Use a VM connector configured to directly access the persistence queue of the Pub Mule application persistence object store. C. Use an Anypoint MQ connector configured to directly access the Pub Mule application persistence object store. D. Use the Object Store v2 REST API configured to access the Pub Mule application persistence object store. The correct answer is D. Use the Object Store v2 REST API configured to access the Pub Mule application persistence object store. Explanation why D is correct. In CloudHub, an object store instance created by a Mule application, such as Pub, is strictly isolated to that specific application's runtime context. The standard object store connector in another application, Sub, cannot directly reference or connect to Pub's object store. However, CloudHub provides the Object Store v2 REST API, which allows external services or other Mule applications to directly read, write, and query key value pairs stored within Pub's object store by using appropriate client credentials and org/dnv/app keys. Why other options are incorrect? A is incorrect. The native object store connector can only access object stores within its own application deployment boundaries. Application sub cannot cross-reference pub's local object store via the connector directly. B is incorrect. VM connectors operate in memory or on local VM queues within a single application/cluster instance. They cannot inspect or directly interface with the internal storage underlying an object store v2 instance of another CloudHub application. C is incorrect. Anypoint MQ is an enterprise message broker service for publishing and consuming queues/topics, not a bridge or protocol for querying CloudHub object store v2 key value data directly. Q18. An organization uses Mule runtimes, which are managed by Anypoint Platform Private Cloud Edition. What MuleSoft component is responsible for feeding analytics data to non-MuleSoft analytics platforms? A. Anypoint Exchange. B. The Mule runtimes. C. Anypoint API Manager. D. Anypoint Runtime Manager. The correct answer is B. The Mule runtimes. Explanation why B is correct. In Anypoint Platform Private Cloud Edition PCE, built-in Anypoint Analytics is not supported or included. To forward API performance metrics, transaction logs, and custom analytics events to third-party/non-MuleSoft analytics platforms, such as Splunk, ELK, or Datadog, the Mule runtimes themselves feed the data directly. This is configured within the Mule runtime using appenders, such as log4j2 appenders, or plugins embedded in the runtime environment. Why other options are incorrect? A is incorrect. Anypoint Exchange is a platform repository used for discovering, publishing, and sharing reusable API specifications, assets, and connectors. It does not collect or export execution analytics data. C is incorrect. API Manager governs, manages, and secures APIs, e.g., applying policies and client access controls. But in PCE, it does not act as an analytics forwarder to external third-party platforms. D is incorrect. Anypoint Runtime Manager provides administration and deployment control plane functionality. It does not intercept and transmit runtime event/analytics payloads directly to external non-MuleSoft platforms. Q19. According to MuleSoft's IT delivery and operating model, which approach can an organization adopt in order to reduce the frequency of IT project delivery failures? A. Decouple central IT projects from the innovation that happens within each line of business. B. Adopt an enterprise data model. C. Prevent technology sprawl by reducing production of API assets. D. Stop scope creep by centralizing requirements gathering. The correct answer is A. Decouple central IT projects from the innovation that happens within each line of business. Explanation why A is correct. MuleSoft's IT delivery and operating model, centered around the Center for Enablement/C for E, advocates shifting central IT from a project delivery bottleneck to a capacity enabler. By decoupling central IT projects from business line innovation, central IT focuses on producing reusable core assets, APIs, integration, and services that line of business, LOB, teams can self-serve and consume to build their own solutions. This reduces project delivery failures caused by overloaded central IT teams and tight project dependencies. Why other options are incorrect? B is incorrect. Forcing a single tightly coupled enterprise data model, EDM, across the entire enterprise creates rigid dependencies and high coordination overhead, which slows down delivery and increases the risk of project failure. C is incorrect. Restricting the creation of API assets works against MuleSoft's core philosophy. Reusable APIs are the foundation of application networks. Reducing them hinders innovation and reuse rather than preventing project failure. D is incorrect. Centralizing requirements gathering reintroduces traditional, slow waterfall processes and tightly couples business teams back to central IT, which increases delivery friction and project risks. Q20. An organization has decided on a CloudHub migration strategy that aims to minimize the organization's own IT resources. Currently, The organization has all of its Mule applications running on its own premises and uses an premises load balancer that exposes all APIs under the base URL https://acme.com as part of the migration strategy. The organization plans to migrate all of its Mule applications and load balancer to CloudHub. What is the most straightforward and cost-effective approach to the Mule applications deployment and load balancing that preserves the public URLs? A. Deploy the Mule applications to CloudHub. Update the name record for an api.acme.com in the organization's DNS server pointing to the A record of a CloudHub dedicated load balancer. DLB. Apply mapping rules in the DLB to map URLs to their corresponding Mule applications. B. For each migrated Mule application, deploy an API proxy Mule application to CloudHub with all applications under control of a dedicated load balancer. CLB. Update the name record for api.acme.com in the organization DNS server pointing to the A record of a CloudHub dedicated load balancer. DLB. Apply mapping rules in the DLB to map each API proxy application to its corresponding Mule applications. C. Deploy the Mule applications to CloudHub. Create name record for api.acme.com in the CloudHub Shared Load Balancer, SLB, pointing to the A record of the on-premise load balancer. Apply mapping rules in the SLB to map URLs to their corresponding Mule applications. D. Deploy the Mule applications to CloudHub. Update the name record for api.acme.com in the organization DNS server pointing to the A record of the CloudHub Shared Load Balancer, SLB. Apply mapping rules in the SLB to map URLs to their corresponding Mule applications. The correct answer is A. Deploy the Mule applications to CloudHub. Update the name record for an api.acme.com in the organization's DNS server pointing to the A record of a CloudHub dedicated load balancer. DLB. Apply mapping rules in the DLB to map URLs to their corresponding Mule applications. Explanation why A is correct. A CloudHub dedicated load balancer DLB is required when an organization needs to use custom domain names like api.acme.com, SSL/TLS certificates, and custom path mapping rules. By configuring URL mapping rules on the DLB and pointing the organizational name record for api.acme.com to the DLB endpoint, e.g. lb-name lb@anypointdns.net. Incoming client requests under https://api.acme.com/https://api.acme.com can be routed directly to the appropriate backend CloudHub applications while preserving public URLs and minimizing IT infrastructure management. Why other options are incorrect? B is incorrect. Deploying individual API proxy Mule applications in front of every business application under a DLB introduces unnecessary operational complexity, resource consumption, extra workers/V cores, and maintenance overhead without providing any additional capability for custom domain mapping. C is incorrect. The CloudHub Shared Load Balancer, SLB, is a multi-tenant service managed by MuleSoft and does not support custom domain name configurations, SSL certificate uploads, or mapping rules pointing back to on-premises load balancers. D is incorrect. The Shared Load Balancer, SLB, only supports standard CloudHub domain names, such as star.cloudhub.io. It does not support custom vanity domains like api.acme.com or custom path-based URI mapping rules.
If this video helped clear up these MuleSoft concepts for you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the content. But don't go anywhere just yet. Stick around and jump straight into the next video to keep building your integration skills.